The fish split open with a wet, heavy sound. Gasps rippled across the dock as something hard and bright slid from the fish's belly and hit the wooden planks. It did not bounce like a stone, it sparkled. Even under the dull gray morning sky, it caught the light and scattered it in sharp flashes that made people squint. A diamond. Not a tiny one, not a chip. A full, rough diamond the size of a walnut, still clouded with seawater and blood. Silence fell so fast it felt violent. All eyes turned to the young woman standing over the fish. Her hands trembled, slick with scales and salt. She was breathing hard, chest rising and falling as if she had just run for her life instead of hauled a fish from the sea. Her name was Amara Reed. 23 years old, caramel skin darkened by the sun, natural hair pulled into a tight bun that never quite stayed neat no matter how hard she tried. Her boots were cracked, her gloves patched twice, her clothes smelling of fish and fuel. The same woman they had laughed at minutes earlier. Someone whispered that came from her fish. Another voice followed sharper, that ain't real. Amara stared at the diamond like it might disappear if she blinked. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Around her, the dock felt too small, too crowded. Men who had mocked her for years edged closer, their faces changing from disbelief to hunger. A hand reached out. "Don't touch it," Amara said, her voice low but firm. The hand froze. The fish lay open at her feet, proof that no one could deny. The diamond was real. Whatever miracle or madness had put it there had chosen her. And standing just behind the crowd, arms folded, was the man who had laughed the loudest at her that morning, Marcus Cole. His eyes were no longer amused. They were calculating. As Amara bent to pick up the diamond, unaware of how quickly the world was about to turn against her, the dock groaned under the weight of people moving closer, and the sea behind them rolled dark and restless. What she had pulled from the water would change her life forever. But first, it would test whether she would survive it. The sun had barely risen when Amara pushed her small fishing boat away from the shore that morning. The water was calm, the kind of quiet that felt borrowed, like it could be taken back at any moment. She moved with practiced ease, checking her nets, tightening ropes, ignoring the ache in her shoulders from the day before. Fishing was not a job people expected a woman like her to do, not in this town, not on this dock. Men leaned against crates and railings as she passed, their laughter sharp and familiar. "Morning mermaid," one of them called out. Another added, "You still chasing fish instead of a real life." Amara didn't turn. She had learned long ago that answering only fed them. Her face stayed calm, eyes forward, jaw set. Marcus Cole stepped into her path. He was older, broader, loud in a way that demanded attention. People listened when Marcus spoke, not because he was wise but because he was relentless. "You know," he said, shaking his head, "there are easier ways for a pretty girl to make money. Fishing ain't one of them." Amara met his eyes. "I'm not looking for easy." Laughter exploded around them. Marcus grinned, "Suit yourself, just don't cry when the sea teaches you your place." She stepped around him and boarded her boat. As the engine sputtered to life, someone shouted, "Give it up, Amara, this ain't women's work." She didn't look back. Out on the water, the noise faded. The sea didn't care if she was a woman or a man. It only cared about patience, timing, and respect. Amara had learned that from her grandfather, Elijah Reed, the man who had raised her after her parents died. He had taught her how to read the waves, how to listen to the wind, how to trust her instincts even when others doubted them. "People laugh at what they don't understand," he used to say. "Let them laugh, just don't let them stop you." By midday, Amara's nets were heavy, heavier than usual. Her arms burned as she hauled them in, one pull at a time. Something thrashed beneath the surface, strong and angry. When the fish finally broke the water, her breath caught. It was massive. She wrestled it onto the boat, heart racing, hands shaking from effort and excitement. This wasn't just a good catch. This was the kind of catch that could feed her for weeks. Or so she thought. Back at the dock, the laughter started again when they saw her struggling. "Looks like the sea finally gave you something," someone shouted. Marcus smirked, "Bet it's all bones." Amara said nothing. She dragged the fish onto the cutting table, lifted her knife, and did what she had done 100 times before. Then the blade struck something hard. She frowned, pressed again. The sound was wrong, not flesh, not bone. Curious murmurs spread through the crowd as she sliced deeper. And then it happened. The diamond slid free. Now, standing there with the diamond in her hand, Amara felt the weight of every laugh, every insult, every long day alone on the water pressing down on her all at once. The dock was no longer a place of jokes. It was a place of danger. Marcus took a step closer. "That belongs to the sea," he said, "and the sea belongs to all of us." Amara closed her fingers around the diamond, her pulse quickened. She didn't know where it came from. She didn't know what it would cost her. But she knew one thing. She wasn't giving it up. As the crowd tightened around her and the sea wind carried a low, uneasy hum, Amara realized that catching the diamond was only the beginning. The dock buzzed with voices, but none of them sounded friendly anymore. Amara felt it before she fully understood it, the shift in the air. The same people who had laughed at her now watched her like she was prey that had wandered too close. Their smiles were gone. Their eyes followed the diamond in her hand as if it were breathing. Be reasonable," Marcus said, stepping closer again. His voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. "You found something valuable in shared waters, that means it should be shared." Amara shook her head slowly. "I caught the fish, I cleaned it, it came from my net." A man behind Marcus scoffed. "You think that means it's yours?" "Yes," she said louder now. A few people murmured in agreement with Marcus. Others stayed silent, unsure which side was safer to stand on. Amara felt suddenly very alone. She slipped the diamond into the inside pocket of her jacket and zipped it shut. That was when Marcus smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "Fine," he said, "do what you want, just don't say nobody warned you." Amara lifted her crate of fish and walked away from the dock. She could feel eyes burning into her back, hear whispers trailing her steps. She won't last a week. Someone like her don't know what to do with that kind of luck. She better watch herself. By the time she reached her small rented room near the edge of town, her hands were shaking. She locked the door behind her and leaned against it, chest heaving. Only then did she pull out the diamond again. Up close, it was even more unbelievable. It wasn't polished, its surface was rough and cloudy, but light still danced inside it, deep and alive. Amara turned it in her palm, her reflection breaking and shifting across its angles. "How?" she whispered. She wrapped it in cloth and hid it beneath a loose floorboard, the same place she kept the little cash she had saved over the years. Then she sat on her bed, staring at the wall, trying to slow her thoughts. That night sleep refused to come. Every sound outside made her sit up: footsteps, a car passing, voices in the distance. Her mind replayed Marcus's smile over and over again. In the morning, she went back to the sea. Fishing was the only thing that made her feel steady. The rhythm of the water, the pull of the nets, it reminded her who she was, not lucky, not special, just hardworking. But the dock felt different now. People watched her openly, conversations stopped when she approached. Marcus wasn't there, which somehow made it worse. By noon, a man in a clean jacket approached her as she unloaded her catch. "You Amara Reed?" he asked. "Yes. I hear you found something unusual." Her stomach tightened. "Who are you?" "Name Victor Hale, I deal in rare stones." Amara's eyes narrowed. "I didn't put anything up for sale." Victor smiled politely. "Word travels fast. Someone described a diamond that doesn't match anything currently on the market. If it's real, it could be worth more than you imagine." She shook her head. "I'm not interested." His smile thinned. "Think about it, opportunities like this don't knock twice." That evening when Amara returned home, her door was unlocked. Her heart dropped. She stepped inside slowly. The room looked the same at first: bed untouched, table where she left it, but then she noticed the floorboard. It was open. The cloth was there. The diamond was gone. Amara screamed. Neighbors rushed in, but there was nothing to see, nothing to trace. No broken lock, no witnesses. The police came hours later, took notes and shrugged. "Hard to prove you even had it," one officer said gently. Amara sat on her bed after they left, numb. The miracle was gone. The silence from the dock suddenly made sense. The next morning, Marcus showed up at her boat. "Rough night?" he asked. She stared at him. "You did this." He laughed, careful with accusations. She lunged at him, but two men grabbed her arms and pulled her back. Marcus leaned in close. You should have listened. For days, Amara didn't fish. She couldn't. Her hands felt empty, her chest heavy. People avoided her now, whispering about how her luck had run out as fast as it came. On the fourth night, someone knocked on her door. She opened it to find an elderly woman she recognized from the market. You don't know me, the woman said softly, but my husband fished these waters before he died. She pressed something into Amara's hand. A small wet pouch. Inside was the diamond. My grandson saw Marcus hide it near the old pier, the woman said. He was scared to speak. I was. Amara's knees buckled. This time, the woman added, be smarter. As Amara closed the door and held the diamond to her chest, tears streaming down her face, she understood something clearly for the first time. The sea had given her a gift. Now she had to learn how to protect it. And the people who wanted it would not stop trying. Amara did not sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her bed, the diamond wrapped in thick cloth and tied with string resting in her lap. Every sound outside made her body tense. The sea wind rattled the window. Somewhere a dog barked. Each noise felt like a warning. By morning she had made a decision. She could not keep living like this, hiding, waiting, fearing. The diamond was not just a blessing, it was a test, and if she failed it, it would swallow her whole. She wrapped the diamond again, this time placing it inside a small metal container her grandfather once used for hooks. She slid it deep into her bag and headed for the dock before the sun fully rose. The men were already there. They paused when they saw her, eyes narrowing, whispers spread fast. She's back. Thought she'd quit. Marcus stood near the edge of the pier, talking to Victor Hale. When Amara saw them together, her chest tightened. Victor's clean jacket stood out like a stain among the worn clothes of the fishermen. Marcus noticed her first. Well, look who found her courage again, he said loudly. Amara walked past him without answering. She set up her nets, hands steady despite the pounding of her heart. Victor approached her, his smile smooth. You look tired, still thinking about my offer. I'm thinking about the sea, Amara replied. Victor leaned closer. You don't belong out here anymore, not after what you found. She looked up at him. The sea decides who belongs. For a moment, something flickered in Victor's eyes, annoyance, maybe respect, then it vanished. Amara pushed her boat into the water and left them behind. Out on the open sea, the weight on her chest eased. The horizon stretched wide and honest. She breathed deeply, letting the rhythm of the waves steady her. Hours passed, the sun climbed. Her nets filled slowly, nothing unusual, doubt crept in. What if the diamond was a one-time miracle? What if she was foolish to believe there was more? Then her net snagged. Hard. The boat lurched as something powerful pulled from below. Amara dug her heels in, muscles straining. Memories of the first catch flashed through her mind, fear and hope twisted together. Easy, she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was talking to the sea or herself. When the net finally broke the surface, it held only fish, no monster, no miracle. She laughed shakily, relief and disappointment mixing in her chest. Back on shore, the dock greeted her with the same cold stares. Marcus watched her unload her catch, his mouth curved in a knowing smile. Told you, he said, luck runs out. Amara ignored him. She sold her fish, earned her small money and turned to leave. That was when Victor blocked her path. You can't hide forever, he said quietly. That stone will ruin you if you don't let it go. Amara met his gaze. It already showed me who you are. She walked away, heart racing. That evening, she traveled farther than usual to an old jeweler her grandfather once trusted. His shop was small, tucked between two closed stores, its sign faded but familiar. Inside, the air smelled of dust and metal. The old man squinted at the diamond through a lens for a long time. His hands trembled, not with age but with awe. This, he said finally, is no ordinary stone. Amara swallowed. How much? He shook his head slowly. You don't sell this in this town, you don't sell it alone, and you don't tell anyone you have it. Her stomach dropped. Why? Because stones like this have stories, he said, and stories like this attract dangerous ears. Amara left the shop with more fear than answers. That night, as she locked her door, she noticed something carved into the wood beside her handle. A symbol. Simple, sharp, fresh. Her breath caught. Someone had been there. She backed away slowly, clutching her bag. The sea had not finished with her yet. And neither had the people watching her every move. If this story has pulled you in so far, this is a good time to support the channel by subscribing and liking the video so you don't miss what happens next. Share it with someone who loves powerful stories like this. Also, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Amara did not touch the door handle. She stood frozen, staring at the symbol carved into the wood. It wasn't deep, but it was deliberate, clean lines. Someone had taken time to do it. Someone wanted her to see it. Slowly, she stepped back into the dim hallway, her bag tight against her chest. Her heart hammered as she listened. Silence, no footsteps, no voices. Whoever had been there was gone. She waited a long time before unlocking the door. Inside, everything looked normal, too normal. Her bed was neat, her table untouched, but the feeling of being watched clung to her skin. She did not sleep. Before dawn, Amara packed what little she owned. Clothes, papers, her grandfather's old notebook, and the metal container with the diamond. She tied her hair into a tighter bun than usual and pulled on her boots. If danger was coming, she would not be waiting for it. The sea greeted her with low mist and rolling gray waves. She pushed her boat out earlier than anyone else. The dock was quiet, but she felt eyes on her even then. Out on the water, she headed farther than she ever had before, past familiar markers, past the spots her grandfather warned her about. The sea grew darker, deeper, more serious. She dropped her nets and waited. Time stretched. The silence was heavy, broken only by the creak of the boat and the slap of water against wood. Doubt crept in again, whispering that she was foolish, that she should have sold the diamond the moment she had the chance. Then her line pulled. Not sharply, slowly, purposefully. Amara stood, muscles tight, hands steady. Whatever was on the other end was strong but controlled, like it knew what it was doing. She hauled the net in inch by inch. Sweat ran down her face, her arms burned. When the fish surfaced, her breath caught. It wasn't as large as the first one, but its scales shimmered strangely, catching light even in the dull morning. As she pulled it onto the boat, it thrashed once, then went still. Amara hesitated before cutting it open. Inside, nestled deep in its belly, was something hard. Not a diamond. A small leather pouch. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were 3 rough stones, smaller than the first diamond but unmistakable. Her knees gave way, and she sat heavily on the deck. This was no accident. The sea was not playing games. Back on shore, word spread fast. Not about the stones, Amara kept them hidden, but about her return to fishing farther out than anyone else dared. Men watched her with a mix of fear and anger now. Marcus confronted her again, his voice low. "You think you're smarter than everyone." "I think I'm done listening to you," Amara replied. That night she didn't go home. She stayed with an old friend of her grandfather, a quiet woman named Ruth who lived inland. Ruth listened without interrupting as Amara told her everything. When Amara finished, Ruth nodded slowly. "Some gifts come with responsibility," she said, "and some truths don't like being hidden." The next day, Amara traveled to the city. Tall buildings replaced the sea breeze, noise replaced silence. She felt small but determined. She met with experts, lawyers, people who spoke carefully and asked many questions. The diamonds were real. Rare. Worth more than she had ever imagined. But news like that never stayed quiet. Within days, articles appeared online. A young female fisherman, diamonds found in fish, a miracle, a mystery. Marcus saw it too. So did Victor Hale. The pressure began immediately. Calls, offers, threats wrapped in polite words. Amara stood firm. She refused to sell on anyone else's terms. Instead, she made a choice that shocked everyone. She partnered with environmental researchers, using the diamonds to fund protection for the waters where she fished. She invested in safer equipment, fair pay, and training for anyone willing to learn, man or woman. The dock changed. Slowly. Men who once laughed now lowered their eyes when she passed. Some apologized, others stayed silent. Marcus didn't. One evening, as Amara walked back to her boat, he blocked her path one last time. "You think you won," he said. She met his gaze calmly. "No, I think I survived." Behind him, the sea rolled on, indifferent and endless. Marcus stepped aside. Amara walked past him without looking back. But as she pushed her boat into the water that night, she felt it again, that sense of something unfinished. The sea still held secrets, and not all of them were meant to be found. Success did not arrive gently. It came with noise, attention, and eyes that never seemed to close. Amara's name was spoken in places she had never imagined. News channels argued over whether her discovery was luck, fate, or fraud. Social media split into sides, those who praised her strength and those who doubted her story. Through it all, Amara stayed close to the sea. She returned to the dock every morning, not because she needed the money anymore, but because fishing was still who she was. The water kept her grounded when everything else felt unreal. But peace did not last. One evening, as she prepared to leave, she noticed her boat rope had been cut. Cleanly, carefully, the tide was rising fast, pulling the boat away from the pier. She ran, jumped, and barely caught it in time. Her hands shook as she tied a new rope. This was no accident. The message was clear. Later that night, Ruth called her. "You need to be careful," she warned. "Power doesn't just silence mockers, it creates enemies." Amara knew she was right. The next day, Victor Hale requested a meeting. Against her better judgment, Amara agreed, but not alone. She brought a lawyer and chose a public cafe in the city, bright and crowded. Victor arrived calm, smiling. "You've made impressive moves," he said, "but you're still standing in the middle of a storm without shelter." "I didn't ask for your concern," Amara replied. He leaned back. "No, but you need my reach, my protection." "My protection from who?" she asked. Victor's eyes flickered. "From people who don't like losing." Amara stood. "This meeting is over." As she walked away, Victor's voice followed her. "Be careful who you trust, Amara, even heroes drown." That night, Amara dreamed of her grandfather. He stood at the edge of the sea, looking out over dark waters. When he turned to her, his face was serious. "Not every treasure is meant to be taken," he said. "Some are meant to change the taker." She woke with a start. The next morning brought chaos. Marcus was arrested. Police swarmed the dock. Investigations reopened. Witnesses spoke. The old woman's grandson finally told his full story: theft, threats, intimidation. Marcus was taken away in handcuffs, shouting that this was not over. Amara watched from a distance, her heart heavy. She felt no joy, only relief and fear. Because Marcus had been loud, reckless, obvious. The people still watching her now were quieter, smarter. That evening, as the sun sank low, Amara returned to the sea alone. She let her boat drift, the water rocking her gently. She reached into her bag and touched the metal container. The diamonds were still there, but they no longer felt like a gift. They felt like a responsibility she was still learning how to carry. As darkness fell, something large moved beneath her boat, unseen but powerful. Amara held her breath. The sea was reminding her of something important. The water beneath Amara's boat rippled again. She did not panic. She had learned that fear made mistakes louder. Instead, she stood still, letting the boat drift, her eyes scanning the surface. The moonlight painted silver paths across the waves, calm on top, secretive underneath. Then the movement stopped. Amara exhaled slowly. Whatever it was, fish, current, or imagination, it was gone. She started the engine and headed back toward shore, the hum of the motor steadying her thoughts. By morning, rumors had already spread about Marcus's arrest. Some people acted shocked, others acted relieved. A few avoided Amara altogether, as if her presence alone could pull trouble toward them. The dock felt different now. Quieter, respectful in a careful way. But Amara knew better than to relax. A week later, a letter arrived, no return address. Inside was a single page with neat handwriting. "You have something that does not belong to you. The sea gives, but men take. Choose wisely." Her hands went cold. She showed the letter to her lawyer, then to the police. They took notes, promised to look into it, and warned her to stay alert, but there was nothing solid, no fingerprints, no names. That night, Amara sat with Ruth, the letter spread out on the table between them. This isn't about money anymore, Ruth said quietly. Amara nodded, it's about control. Ruth reached across the table and squeezed her hand, then you take it back. The next days were filled with meetings, environmental groups, community leaders, women who had never dared step onto a fishing boat before but now wanted to learn. Amara listened to their stories, their fears, their hopes. She saw herself in them. So she built something new. A cooperative. Fair rules, shared profit, training for anyone willing to work and respect the sea, safety nets, real ones, not just for fish. The first day the cooperative launched, the dock was crowded, cameras flashed, reporters asked questions. Amara stood at the center, calm but alert. This isn't about diamonds, she said into the microphones. It's about dignity, it's about proving that hard work and respect can change a life. Some clapped. Others watched silently. Victor Hale did not attend. But that evening her lawyer called. Victor's company is under investigation, he said. Fraud, smuggling, the diamonds you found might not be the only ones tied to those waters. Amara's chest tightened, so he knew. Yes, the lawyer replied, and now he's running. The truth settled heavily on her shoulders. The diamonds were not just rare, they were connected to something dark, something bigger than a dock or a town. That night, Amara made her hardest decision yet. She contacted federal investigators. She handed over information, locations, patterns, everything she knew. It meant risk. It meant losing control of the story. But it also meant ending it. Weeks passed. Victor Hale disappeared from headlines, then reappeared in handcuffs. Ships were seized, routes exposed. The sea gave up its secrets one by one. And then, just as suddenly, the noise faded. Life slowed. The cooperative thrived. The dock filled with laughter again, not mocking this time, but genuine. Young girls watched Amara from the shore, eyes wide, seeing possibility where none had existed before. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Amara stood alone at the end of the pier. The water glowed gold, peaceful and honest. She reached into her bag and touched the metal container. The diamonds were still there. But now they felt lighter. Not because they were worth less, but because they no longer owned her. Behind her, footsteps approached. It was Ruth. You did good, she said simply. Amara smiled, a small, tired smile. I just listened to the sea. Ruth nodded, and to yourself. As night fell, Amara looked out over the water, feeling something close to peace. She knew the sea would always be unpredictable. But so was life. And she was finally ready for both. If this chapter moved you, take a moment now to subscribe to the channel and like the video so you don't miss the final turns of this story. Share it with someone who believes courage can come from unexpected places. The sea was calm for 3 straight days. For anyone else, that would have been a blessing. For Amara, it felt like the quiet breath someone took before speaking a hard truth. She had learned to listen to patterns when things stayed too smooth for too long. It usually meant something was shifting beneath the surface. The cooperative was growing faster than she expected. Boats were repaired, new nets arrived, training sessions filled with laughter and nervous excitement, especially when young women stepped onto decks for the first time. Amara watched them closely, correcting grips, adjusting knots, teaching patience. She saw confidence forming where fear once lived. Yet at night, she still locked her doors twice. The letter haunted her thoughts. The sea gives but men take. One afternoon, an old fisherman named Caleb approached her quietly. He had fished those waters longer than most and rarely spoke unless it mattered. There's talk, he said, eyes on the horizon, about divers late at night near the deep drop. Amara's heart tightened. What kind of divers? Not the curious kind. That was enough. She thanked him and stood alone for a long moment, weighing her options. She had already involved authorities, she had already taken risks, but the sea was still being watched, still hunted. That night, Amara returned to the water alone. She didn't go far, she didn't cast nets. She let the boat drift, listening. The moon was thin, the stars sharp, the water moved slowly like it was thinking. Then she heard it. A low mechanical hum. Faint but real. She followed the sound at a distance, keeping her engine low. Near the deep drop, shadows moved where no fishing boats belonged. Lights dipped beneath the surface, then vanished. Divers. Not looking for fish. Looking for what she had found. Amara's hands clenched the wheel, fear rose but so did anger. This was not about luck anymore, this was about theft, about men who thought the sea could be emptied quietly without consequence. She pulled back before she was seen and returned to shore. By morning she had a plan. She called environmental authorities, researchers, journalists she trusted. She didn't accuse, she invited them to observe, to study, to protect. When the boats returned to the water that week, they were not alone. The divers disappeared. Soon after, news broke quietly, illegal operations exposed, equipment seized, routes shut down, the sea once again was allowed to rest. The relief on the dock was real this time. Weeks passed. For the first time since the diamond appeared, Amara felt something close to normal. She fished, she taught, she laughed, the weight on her chest eased. One evening, she opened the metal container and looked at the remaining stones. She thought of her grandfather, of the dock before the laughter turned cruel, of the version of herself who once believed quitting would make things easier. She realized then that the diamonds had already done what they were meant to do. They had revealed truth. They had exposed greed. They had changed her. The next morning, Amara made a quiet announcement. She donated the remaining diamonds to fund long-term protection of the waters and education programs for coastal communities. She kept nothing for herself beyond what she needed to live freely and honestly. Some people were stunned. Others finally understood. On the dock, Marcus's absence was no longer felt. Victor's name faded into memory. What remained was work, respect, and the steady rhythm of the sea. At sunset, Amara stood at the edge of the pier, watching the water glow. She smiled. Not because she had won, but because she had endured. And that, she knew, was the truest victory of all. The morning breeze carried a different feeling. It was not tense, it was not heavy. It felt clean, like the kind of air that comes after a long storm has finally passed. Amara stood on the dock before sunrise, watching the cooperative boats prepare to head out. Laughter floated across the water, nets were checked, engines hummed softly. There was no fear in the movements anymore, only purpose. She walked slowly along the pier, boots tapping against the wood that once echoed with mockery. Now, when people saw her, they nodded with respect. Some smiled. A few young girls waved shyly from the shore, their eyes shining with dreams that no longer felt impossible. Amara waved back. She stepped onto her own boat, not because she needed to prove anything, but because this was still her place. The sea welcomed her the way it always had, without judgment, without memory of insults or praise. Out on the water, she cut the engine and let the boat drift. For the first time since the diamond, her mind was quiet. She thought about the path her life could have taken if she had listened to the laughter, if she had folded herself smaller to fit other people's comfort, if she had believed that certain dreams were not meant for someone like her. The sea rippled gently beneath her boat, sunlight dancing across its surface. She smiled softly. The diamond had never been the miracle. She was. Back on shore, the cooperative continued to grow. The community changed in ways that felt permanent. Fishing became safer, fairer, profits were shared, knowledge was passed down instead of hoarded. The mockery that once followed Amara's footsteps disappeared completely. No one dared laugh anymore, not because of fear, but because there was nothing left to laugh at. The woman they once underestimated had reshaped their world. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ruth joined Amara at the end of the pier. "You ever miss the quiet before all this?" Ruth asked. Amara thought for a moment. "Sometimes, but I don't miss being unseen." Ruth nodded. "That's how I know you found your place." Amara looked out at the horizon, where sea met sky in a line that never stayed still. She understood now that life moved the same way, always shifting, always testing. But she also understood something deeper. Respect is not given. It is earned through endurance. As darkness settled and lanterns flickered on across the dock, Amara felt complete, not rich in diamonds but rich in freedom, purpose, and self-worth. The sea had tested her. She had passed. And the silence that followed was not empty. It was powerful. Before this story ends, take a moment to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, like this video, and share it with someone who believes courage can come from unexpected places. Now tell us in the comments, have you ever been mocked for choosing a path others didn't understand? And what would you have done if you were Amara? Would you have kept the diamond or used it to change everything?